So this game surprised me a bit. I knew it would be similar to Hades, but I didn't know it would be this enjoyable to play. It just entered early access and will be released during the summer of this year with 4 major updates before release. Keep that in mind as things can change and improve, as this is an early access review of the game. For now, I don't think there is too much focus on the story in the game. Camelot has fallen, Arthur and his knights are corrupted, and you now have to take them down to save the day. I do like the premise here, it's great, taking a familiar story and flipping it on its head. I just wish the story played a bigger part, as you see familiar characters all the time. But the gameplay is what shines in this game. You can really tell that a competent team has made this. It's fast, precise, with a ton of flexibility. As I mentioned, Sworn follows the Hades formula very closely. A run will go through different zones, each zone having 2 bosses and a ton of rooms to clear. As you enter a room or an area, you are locked into that encounter until you die or all the enemies are killed. Then you get to choose where to go next. There are usually 2 paths to choose between, but sometimes there is just one. This might be because the game still is in early access and everything isn't implemented yet. After progressing through a few rooms, you'll face your first boss. The mid-zone boss is usually a bit easier and comes in 2 variations. The final boss in each zone is one of Arthur's knights and are a bit more impressive. The knights have a wider arsenal of attacks and play completely different from one another. What I find kind of annoying is that they all rely on ads during the boss fight. I would be fine if there were like one of them that had ads, but when all 3 that are implemented in the game right now have ads, it's kind of annoying. I'm excluding the final boss, as I'm not gonna discuss that spoiler. But I think a few more mechanics or some different type of mechanics would serve them great, and then removing the ads. When progressing in the game, you're not only clearing areas of enemies, there are also shops, challenges and NPCs to encounter. There isn't a ton of variety here, but I would assume the upcoming content patches for the game will address this. Each room you clear also grants you a reward. This is usually a blessing from one of the Fey Lords, and work exactly like boons in Hades. You first get to choose one of 2 Fey Lords. You are then presented with 3 blessings. You get to choose one of these blessings, and they are usually upgrades to your attacks, adding elemental power or something like that. There are also perks and ultimate attack you can get, and there are also pets from each Fey Lord that can help you out. Pretty cute. The moment-to-moment gameplay is very fast, and all your attacks can be cancelled with a dodge, making the gameplay even more snappy and precise. The first zone is super easy. Same goes for the 2 bosses. After that, it picks up a bit, and by the end the game is rather challenging. The progression in difficulty is delivered in a good pace, but I do think there are too many frustrating enemies towards the end, but hopefully that can be smoothed out during the early access period. When you die in the game, you are returned to the game's hub. The hub is very bare bones in the beginning, but as you keep playing, more and more upgrades and NPCs will be available to you. The game can also be played in 4-player co-op. For this reason, there are 4 different characters in the game. What I think is a missed opportunity here is that the game doesn't have local co-op. I would have loved to play this with a friend on the couch. That is something I hope they add during the early access as well. The first character you start out with is the Vigilante. Then you'll unlock the Monk, the Rook and the Spectre. By themselves, there isn't really any difference. The difference instead comes from the weapons they use and the spells they can use. Vigilante, the first character you start off with, has a sword, and I would say is the most agile character. His next weapon is a bow and then a staff, making his arsenal very different depending on which weapon you choose. I won't spoil the last one. Rook is the slowest character and uses heavy weapons. His first weapon is a gigantic hammer, and his second weapon is a large cannon. Yes, he holds a cannon under his arm. The Spectre is kind of a mage, having a sphere that shoots medium-range bolts, but then also has a scythe and flying daggers, so I don't really know. The Monk is probably my favorite one, having a large mace as the first weapon, and then my personal favorite is the magical staff. This one fires large bolts that are pretty slow but pack a punch with the right upgrades. But the thing I like the most about the Monk is that she has a spell called Crystal Turret. This one lets you place a crystal that shoots at enemies. With the right upgrades, blessings and perks, you can place a ton of these, letting the turrets do all the work. It's pretty funny how powerful you can make them, and they basically single-handedly killed all the bosses for me. All weapons also have their own little stat tree where you can enhance the weapon's stats a bit. Outside of the weapons and spells, else, there are pretty large trees of passive buffs for your characters. More HP and revives in one, starting gold and trade in another, enhancing your spell in a third, and so on. There is also a bit of appearance changing you can do, a bounty board for more rewards, and the last NPC will have overall enhancements, adding new things that can happen during a run. I'm a huge fan of the multiple characters and unique weapons and spells for each character. There is so much here to mess around with and try out. During a run there are also weapon-specific upgrades, just like in Hades, which means that you want to take all of them out to see what enhancements you can get out of them, because these will usually change how you play with that weapon. In one run I made the cannon's regular attack insanely powerful with crit and one-shot most enemies. Or you can make the bow super fast and adding root, making the enemies not being able to move is pretty cool. The blessings do also have a deeper synergy system, just like in Hades. I don't know all the combinations and how deep it goes, but I've seen a few of them. The overall style and atmosphere of the game is pretty bleak. Personally, I like a more vibrant game, but it's at least easy to see what is happening on the screen at all times. I do appreciate that. There are a few water-type enemies later on with attacks that are hard to know how long their reach is. Other than that, I think the enemy attacks are very clear to see. I like the enemy combinations. I do want more variety, but with the blessings, your attacks are very easy to see as they usually get connected to the color of the Feylord. So distinguishing your attacks from enemy attacks is pretty easy. But the most frustrating thing during combat is that you can't pause. Pressing the menu button brings up the main menu, but it doesn't pause the game. Why? What is the benefit of not being able to pause the game in the middle of combat? I just hate when games does this. There is no good reason for this. There isn't an option either for exiting a run and continue it later. When I exited a run midway through and jumped in again, I was just back at the start, which is a bummer. And I mean, a run can take pretty long, and being able to save during a run would be great. I hope they address both of these things during the early access period. Overall, I think Sworn is off to a great start, and I do absolutely recommend it if you like Hades type of roguelikes. One caveat is that I can't really say anything about the co-op aspect of the game. I haven't tried it. If you have played it in co-op, I would love a comment about how the balancing of the game is and if it runs smoothly. In single player, I haven't had any performance issues at all, so I'm a bit curious. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Hope you liked the review. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.